in the year 1347, in a forgotten corner of what is now Eastern Europe, something unspeakable happened. A queen anointed by God, crowned with gold, beloved by her children, was dragged from her throne and buried alive by the very people she had sworn to protect. Her name was struck from official records, her portraits burned, her tomb unmarked. History tried to forget Queen Elisaveta of Moldavia, but some horrors refused to stay buried. This is her story, a tale of how quickly love can turn to hatred, how power corrupts even the innocent, and how the medieval world could be more savage than any nightmare we dare imagine. Elisaveta was never meant to be a queen. Born in 1310 to a wealthy spice merchant in Constantinople, she grew up in a world of silk and saffron, where her father's caravans brought exotic treasures from distant lands. Her childhood was filled with languages: Greek from her mother, Latin from her tutors, Arabic from the traders who frequented their home. She learned to read not just books, but people's faces, their intentions, their fears. The young Elisaveta possessed an unsettling intelligence. At 12, she could calculate trade profits faster than grown men. At 15, she was mediating disputes between her father's business partners with wisdom that seemed to come from some ancient well of knowledge. But it was her beauty that would prove both blessing and curse. Raven black hair that caught light like oil on water, eyes the color of winter storms, and skin so pale it seemed translucent in candlelight. Her father, Dmitri, often said she was touched by something beyond the mortal world. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps that otherworldly quality was what caught the attention of Prince Vlad of Moldavia when his diplomatic mission arrived in Constantinople in 1328. Elisaveta was 18, helping her father entertain the foreign delegation when she met the prince's gaze across a table laden with pomegranates and honeyed wine. Something passed between them, not love, not yet, but recognition, as if two predators had spotted each other in the wild and realized they were equals. She speaks like water flows, Vlad later told his advisors, smooth, but with hidden depths that could drown a man. Within 3 months, the marriage contract was signed. Elisaveta would leave everything she knew to become princess of a land she'd never seen, among people who spoke a language she barely understood. Her mother wept as if attending a funeral. Perhaps, in her heart, she was. Moldavia, in 1329, was a realm balanced on a knife's edge, squeezed between the Ottoman Empire and Hungary. Battered by Mongol raiders from the east, the principality survived through cunning rather than strength. Prince Vlad needed a wife who could navigate the treacherous waters of medieval diplomacy, and in Elisaveta, he found his match. The wedding was a spectacle that emptied the royal treasury. For 3 days, wine flowed like rivers through the capital city of Suceava. Elisaveta, draped in cloth gold and Byzantine pearls, looked like an icon come to life. The people cheered for their beautiful new princess, blessing her womb with hopes for strong sons. But Elisaveta had grander ambitions than merely producing heirs. Within a year, she had mastered Romania and was sitting in on council meetings, her sharp mind dissecting trade agreements and military strategies, when plague struck the eastern provinces in 1332. It was Elisaveta who organized the relief efforts, personally overseeing the distribution of grain and medicine. When Hungarian raiders threatened the northern borders, she proposed the diplomatic solution that secured peace without bloodshed. The people began to whisper that their princess was blessed by God. Crops flourished in regions she visited. Sick children recovered after she laid hands on them. Whether through genuine divine favor or shrewd political theater, Elisaveta became beloved in a way that made her husband nervous. When Prince Vlad died suddenly of fever in 1338, some whispered, poison, though nothing was ever proven there should have been chaos. Instead, the boyars unanimously declared Elisaveta regent for her 8-year-old son, Mihai. It was unprecedented, a foreign woman ruling a Orthodox Christian kingdom. But by then, her network of allies was unshakable. For 7 years, Queen Elisaveta ruled Moldavia with an iron fist wrapped in silk. She modernized the army, established new trade routes, built churches and hospitals. The royal court became a center of learning that attracted scholars from across Europe. Under her reign, Moldavia prospered as never before. But prosperity breeds envy. And in the shadows of her success, darker currents were beginning to stir. The first crack in Elisaveta's reign appeared in the winter of 1345. When her son Mihai reached his 15th birthday, old enough to rule in his own right, the boyars, who had accepted a foreign queen as regent, were less comfortable with her continued influence over the young king. "She has made him soft," grumbled Bogdan, the fierce leader of the military faction. "A Moldavian prince should know the weight of a sword, not spend his days reading Greek philosophy." It was true that Mihai preferred books to battles, music to military drills. Under his mother's tutelage, he had become scholarly, thoughtful qualities. That seemed weak to the warrior nobility, who had built their power on blood and steel. The second crack came with the Great Famine of 1346. After years of abundant harvests, the rains failed completely. Crops withered in the fields. The Teest River ran so low that children could walk across it. Desperate peasants began flooding into the cities, their hollow eyes accusing the queen who had promised prosperity. Elisaveta emptied the royal granaries, sold the crown jewels, even melted down golden church ornaments to buy grain from Venetian traders. But it wasn't enough. By winter, people were boiling leather for soup and grinding tree bark into flour. That was when the whispers began. "She brought this curse upon us," hissed old women at market stalls. "Foreign witch, with her strange ways and unholy beauty." "The prince was never sick until she came," muttered tavern keepers. "Poison in her kiss. Mark my words." "Look how she speaks to the priests," spat the more religious nobles, "challenging holy men, reading books meant for clergy alone. God is punishing us for tolerating such blasphemy." The truth was simpler and more brutal. Elisaveta had been too successful. She had consolidated power so effectively that when crisis struck, there was nowhere else to place the blame. She had become indispensable, and indispensable people are always dangerous to those who would rule. The final crack became a chasm when young King Mihai announced his intention to marry Yelena, daughter of the Hungarian king. It was a brilliant match, one that would secure Moldavia's borders for generations. But it was also his first independent decision made without consulting his mother, for the first time in 7 years. Queen Elisaveta felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The conspiracy began in Lent of 1347. In the stone chambers beneath the Cathedral of St. George, 7 men met by candlelight: 3 boyars, 2 bishops, a military commander, and the court physician who had once served Prince Vlad. "She knows," whispered Bishop Hierest, his gaunt face skeletal in the flickering light. "Yesterday she questioned me about the grain reserves, about why the church tithes haven't been distributed to the poor. She suspects we've been holding back supplies." It was true. While the people starved, the conspirators had been hoarding grain, waiting for the crisis to deepen, for desperation to make the population receptive to change. They needed the queen to fail completely before they could act. "The Hungarian marriage gives us our chance," said Boyar Stefan, fingering the hilt of his dagger. "Once the boy is wed, his wife will provide new influence. We can eliminate the mother and claim it was God's judgment for her sins." But simple assassination seemed to clean too quick. These men had grown to hate Elisaveta with a peculiar venom reserved for those we once loved. They wanted her to suffer as they believed she had made them suffer slowly, helplessly, aware of her fate, but powerless to change it. The idea came from Brother Macarius, the monastery scribe who had been documenting ancient punishments for heretics and witches. In the time of Emperor Justinian, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, they would seal the condemned in stone chambers with just enough air to last 3 days, long enough for complete repentance, ... or complete despair. At him in the guttering candlelight. Even in an age of public executions and creative tortures, the suggestion was shocking. She would have time to pray, added Bishop Iorist, as if seeking divine approval for the deed. Time to confess her sins and prepare her soul. Time to understand what she has brought upon herself, growled Bogdan the Fierce. They chose the feast day of St. Catherine Patron, saint of scholars and philosophers, a pointed irony given Elisaveta's love of learning. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. During the evening banquet, the queen's wine would be drugged with poppy extract, enough to make her drowsy but not unconscious. She would be carried to her chambers, ostensibly overcome with grief for the starving people. But instead of her bed, she would wake in the ancient crypt beneath the cathedral, in a stone chamber barely larger than a coffin, with walls already mortared shut except for one final stone that would complete her tomb. On November 25th, 1347, as the first snows began to fall on Sasiva, Queen Elisaveta of Moldavia attended what would be her last feast. She wore a gown of quan, deep blue silk, her black hair braided with silver threads that caught the firelight. Those who were there later said she seemed unusually quiet, almost melancholy, as if she sensed something in the air. The drugged wine worked perfectly. By midnight, the queen was unconscious, carried by trusted servants who believed they were helping their mistress to bed. By dawn, she was waking in absolute darkness, her hands pressing against cold stone, her voice echoing back from walls that would never again let her see the light. The sound she made when she realized her fate. First scream of pure terror and disbelief was heard by Brother Macarius, keeping vigil in the chapel above. He later said it was like the cry of a soul being dragged into hell. For 3 days, the conspirators told the court that the queen was ill, refusing visitors, praying for the starving people. For 3 days, they listened to the sounds from beneath the cathedral floor first, screaming, then pounding, then weeping, then prayers, then silence. On the 4th day, they announced that Queen Elisaveta had died in her sleep, overcome by grief for her people's suffering. Her body was sealed in a stone sarcophagus, the very chamber where she had actually perished in, placed in the cathedral crypt with full honors. King Mihai wept genuine tears at his mother's funeral, never knowing she lay dead beneath his feet, her fingernails worn to nothing from clawing at the stone. Her beautiful voice silenced forever in the darkness she had feared since childhood. With Queen Elisaveta dead, the conspirators expected gratitude. Instead, they found horror. The Hungarian marriage proceeded as planned, but King Mihai had changed. Where once he had been gentle and scholarly, he became cold and suspicious. Began investigating his mother's death, questioning servants, examining financial records, slowly uncovering the network of lies that had destroyed the woman who raised him. Within 2 years, all 7 conspirators were dead. Bishop Iorist was found hanged in his cell, officially ruled a suicide. Bayar Stefan died when his horse threw him during a hunt, though witnesses noted the animal had been calm until it suddenly reared in terror. Bogdan the Fierce simply vanished one winter night, his body never found. The others met similarly mysterious ends. Poison, accidents, disappearances. King Mihai never openly accused anyone, never held trials or executions. But those who had murdered his mother began dying one by one, until none remained to tell the truth of what had happened in the cathedral crypt. But the kingdom they had sought to save was already doomed. The guilt of Elisaveta's murder spread like a plague through the court. Nobles who had remained loyal began to question everything, wondering who could be trusted if a queen could be buried alive by her own subjects. The unity that had made Moldavia strong crumbled into paranoia and faction. When the Ottoman armies came in 1359, they found a realm already dead from within. King Mihai died in the final battle, and with him died the last hope of independence. The conspirators had gotten their wish. The foreign queen's influence was ended forever. The price was everything she had built in the decades that followed. Elisaveta's name was systematically erased from official histories. Her portraits were painted over, her charitable foundations dissolved, her reforms attributed to her late husband or son. The church, complicit in her murder, declared her an apostate whose very mention was forbidden. But memory has a way of seeping through stone. Just as voices echo in buried chambers, the villages around Suceava, grandmothers still whisper stories of the beautiful queen who loved learning, who tried to save her people from famine, who was silenced by men who feared her power. They say that on winter nights, when the wind howls through the ruins of the old cathedral, you can still hear her voice, not screaming now, quote, singing the lullabies she once sang to her son, the prayers she whispered in the darkness, the words of forgiveness that her murderers never lived to hear. In the year 1347, in a forgotten corner of what is now Eastern Europe, something unspeakable happened. A queen anointed by God, crowned with gold, beloved by her children, was dragged from her throne and buried alive by the very people she had sworn to protect. Her name was struck from official records, her portraits burned, her tomb unmarked. History tried to forget Queen Elisaveta of Moldavia, but some horrors refused to stay buried. This is her story, a tale of how quickly love can turn to hatred, how power corrupts even the innocent, and how the medieval world could be more savage than any nightmare we dare imagine.